What up? Jeffrey here, coming to you right now from my dorm. I just got back from the Dominican Republic, and I'm here to talk to you more about my trip. So, I'm here to talk to you about what I got from the trip. So, more specifically, what I learned from the field trip, what was most meaningful to me from the field trip, what this experience in the Dominican Republic means to my academic and career plans, how this really affected me as a person, and what specific moments really contributed to that feelings. Let's get right into it. Now let's talk about what I learned through this trip. Now the first thing that I learned is more Spanish. In the last year, I forgot a lot of my Spanish. I didn't take a language in the 4th year of high school, and I didn't take a language last semester. And LAS requires you to take 4 years of a language. So, I wasn't really ready to take a Spanish class. There's no way I had really the knowledge of Spanish to be able to handle the level of classes here at U of I. So, going to the DR really was a great refresher for my Spanish. I'm sure all you guys saw me talking to, all the Dominican students. We were all talking in Spanish, and that, that immersion really helped me get back on track for Spanish. So when I returned to U of I spring semester right now, I signed up for Spanish 141, and I believe that going to the DR really helped me prepare for it. I'm in Spanish 141 now, and 2 weeks in, it's going great. I can tell you, it's awesome. And now the second thing that I learned is, hang on 1 second, I love this song. That's the Dominican Republic. Hang on 1 second. Yo.
Hola Jeffrey, ¿qué lo que?
¿Quién llama?
Te habla Laura.
Dame luz, Laura. ¿Qué hay? Estoy bien. ¿Y tú?
Estoy bien. ¿En qué tú estás?
Ahora estoy grabando un video. Te llamaré más tarde.
Claro que sí, entonces hablamos luego.
Tato. Hasta luego. That was Laura. She was one of the kids at ACES that, we hung out with, I spoke with. She was in my group project, and so she just wanted to say hi. And, where were we? Oh, that's right. The second thing that I learned about was a new culture. Yes, I during my trip, I really got immersed in the Dominican culture because, I was in the Dominican Republic. But really, what really, contributed to, my learning a new culture was hanging out with the Dominicans. They talked to me a lot about their culture and such. They talked to me about politics. They told me about, what the political situations are in the Dominican Republic and what the PLD and the PRD are. They're the two main parties of the Dominican Republic and their beliefs and such, and which is in power right now. Gotta talk a lot about politics to them. I thought that was pretty cool. And another thing that I learned was about Dominican culture from the students was dancing. They taught us how to dance. I'll get into more details later, but yeah. And then some of the activities that we did throughout the trip really also taught me a lot about the culture. For example, when we had the cooking lessons at ISA, learning how to cook traditional Dominican food, I really got a taste of what the secret recipe to cooking Dominican food is. It's bouillon, and how it's cooked, and the cultural significance of sancocho. And yeah, I that was kind of like a small insight or an insight into Dominican cooking, and yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. And then, yes, dancing. That was so much fun. You know, we got to learn a lot about the music of the Dominican Republic, you know, merengue and bachata. You know, they're the two main, most popular types of music in the Dominican Republic. You know, they're at every time we got into a car, every time we went like to a nightclub and such, they were always either playing merengue and bachata, and I thought, yeah, it's everywhere. And you know, we were dancing a lot. You know, as I said earlier, the Dominican students taught us how to dance, and you know, we went dancing at the discoteca, and we also went dancing in Sosua. And in both those times, you know, we were with the Dominican students, and you know, we really got good insight into a pastime, a favorite recreational activity of the Dominicans. And yeah, those were very fun, very, very fun times. And the next thing that I learned is, hang on one second.
What are you guys doing?
Oh, it's Jeffrey. Hey, Jeffrey.
Hey,
We're
Jeffrey.
trying to dance bachata. Wait, weren't you just in the Dominican Republic, Jeffrey?
Yeah, weren't you?
Yeah.
Then you should be a master at this.
Yeah.
I would love to help you guys, but I'm filming a video in my room. You guys just turn down the music a little bit?
Sure thing, Jeffrey, but after the video, you'll for sure teach us how to dance bachata, right?
Yeah, will you?
Sure, but I gotta get back to this first.
Okay, Jeffrey, but don't forget.
Again, sorry about that. Okay. So the next thing that I learned from the trip was about agricultural processes in the Caribbean. You know, I got to learn a bunch about how different foods that I eat every day are made, you know, like grown. You know, for example, we got to learn from Don Jose's farm, we got to learn how nuts are made. And from the chocolate plantation, I got to see how the chocolate is harvested and processed. And at the coffee processing plant in Santo Domingo, I really got to see how the coffee is roasted and processed. And yeah, and what I really found interesting was how the harvesting processes really vary for different kinds of crops and such. You know, how the process to make cacao is different from the process of making a banana. They're both crops, they're both grown and such, but you know, they have very different paths of production and processing and such, and I thought that was pretty cool. And then the next thing that I really got to learn from the trip was quality control. I got to learn, I learned about quality control from the Goya factory visit. You know, I interested in transferring to industrial engineering, and in the brochure they said one of the track options that I found out that you could take was a quality control track. And I wasn't really sure what it was. I didn't really know what I couldn't really guess what it is from its name. Then when I went to Goya, I got to see this firsthand. I thought that was hella cool. You know, I thought it was cool at the different standards that each product has to meet. You know, for example, the coconut milk, it has to meet USDA and Goya standards for cooking. And
another thing I also learned from Goya was how distribution works. You know, how they get how did they get the product, the coconut milk, from the Goya plant in Santo Domingo all the way to the Goya plantation, to the Goya plantation in New Jersey. I'm sorry, Goya distribution center in New Jersey. And then how do they get it from that distribution center in New Jersey all the way to supermarkets across the U.S.? And oh. You know, I thought that was really interesting, and I think that's definitely a career, either one of those two careers that we pursued that we saw at Goya are two of the careers I think that, you know, I take the most interest in. And yeah, so that's pretty much an overview of what I learned at on the trip. And yeah, it was awesome experience, and you know, I still miss it to this day.
The most meaningful events to me from the trip were 1. Don Jose's farm visit. 2. The visit to Goya. 3. The history talk from Professor Guitar. 4. Last but not least, the health talk. Now let's go more into depth about each of those. 1. Don Jose's farm. So the reason why I like Don Jose's farm so much was it was a sample of everything you wanted to see about agriculture. So, you know, he had chocolate, he had higuera, he had raspberries, he had nuts. He just had a mix of everything. And, you know, seeing his farm was also provided a lot of insight into global warming too. Like, he showed us the little coffee that he had, and he told us that he used to export it to Vermont with the author of In the Time of the Butterflies book. I think her name was Julia Alvarez. But then, because of the global warming, the coffee just couldn't grow in his plantation anymore. He just couldn't grow in his plantation, so he ended up just going ahead and having to stop production. So, yeah, his farm was really an insight, gave like a representative sample of the things that grow in the Dominican Republic as well, because he had that big variety, right? And yeah, I thought that really provided me a lot of insight into that issue. And then the next thing that provided me a lot of insight was the Goya visit when we were in Santo Domingo. I really got an introduction into the field of quality control, which is an area that I'm interested in. I said before, I'm considering double majoring in industrial engineering, and one of the track options for industrial engineering is quality control. I wasn't really sure of what quality control was, but yeah, I got a really good introduction into what it is. It's how you guarantee that a product meets certain standards and such. Like this, for example, this can, Goya coconut milk. How does this can has to meet the Goya standards. It also has to meet the US standards. It's just got a whole bunch of standards that it needs to meet. And then the third thing that was insightful to me was the history talk from Professor Guitar, the one where she really provided like an insight into like Dominican history. I thought that was pretty insightful because I got to really learn like some fun facts about the history of the Dominican Republic. I really got to, everybody told me, for example, everybody told me that the Tainos died out, but she said that, they didn't all die out, that some of them had like some of them like didn't have, some of them didn't, like, contrary to popular belief, like, some survived because they had, like, a mutation that gave them resistance to the European bugs. And, yeah. And I also got to learn more about, the relationship between the Dominican Republic and Haiti and such. And I thought that was pretty insightful. And I really did learn a lot from that speech. And then the fourth thing, the health talk from Marcos's wife. I found that especially interesting because I got to learn a whole bunch about health. I didn't really know what health was. I thought it was just like a branch of medicine, like McKinley Health Center. What does McKinley Health Center do? It deals with a bunch of the health. It's like the main medical center of the university, so that's what I thought it was. But yeah, I really didn't know, like, I really learned that, a whole bunch of things go into determining health. I thought that was pretty cool, like, culture can influence it and things like that. And, yeah, I learned also from her that, you also need to live, you also need to eat healthy, you need how to live a healthy lifestyle, she said how you could, she also talked about how, you need to eat a healthy diet in order to maintain a good lifestyle and such. So, yeah, she told us, like, she went into depth about how, small things can have a big impact on health. And yeah, I thought that was really eye-opening because I actually got to know the facts that affect my health and such. Wait, if I'm so concerned about my health, why am I eating this? Alright, and that's about it.
Alright, now let's talk about the effect that this trip has had on my future and career plans. So, throughout the trip, there were many visits that encouraged me to take a different path on life. So, I'm here today to talk to you a little bit more about what the visits on our trip really and what they encouraged me to possibly do. So the first one is Goya. I've talked about Goya a bunch before, but that's because I really like this field. So the deal with Goya is that I'm interested in industrial engineering. I'm interested in learning how to do things better. So what our tour guide was doing, he was a quality control engineer. What he was essentially doing was he looks in the facility and sees how things can be done better to better meet the quality standards. So how could they produce efficiently while making sure that the standards are also being met? That's his job in the company. I think that's really cool. And then he also does the product testing, as we saw. He makes sure he takes a sample of the product and he tests it for consistency and stuff. So yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. And also we got to see a little bit of the distribution. Now I'm really, really, really interested in working on supply chain. Actually, I was thinking of taking possibly some coursework in supply chain if the College of Business lets me, but yeah, so I'm interested in how the product would get from the Dominican Republic all the way to a supermarket in, let's say, Seattle. How does that chain really work? So I'm interested in seeing how that works. And also I'm interested in potentially working in demand planning. How many cans of coconut milk should we produce? Those are all questions that Goya helped me. I saw firsthand at Goya. These are all things that, I saw firsthand at Goya. I saw the start of the supply chain in the Dominican Republic. We saw how the quality control was working. Yeah, so we saw a bunch about that stuff, and that really gauged my interest. I also mentioned earlier that I was planning on transferring into ISE. So, yeah. Yeah, so that definitely helped me. And, if I do have to write an essay for ISE, I'm definitely going to write it on the Goya. I'm definitely going to write it on my experience at Goya. Okay, so the next visit that changed my future plans possibly is the visit to Don Jose's farm. Yes, I absolutely loved Don Jose's farm. It was hella awesome. Well, it was so awesome that, one day I want to retire in Latin America. I think I'm going to retire in Latin America. And I think I'm going to live on a farm like that. I hella want to live on a farm like that. I think that'd be hella awesome just to retire, in Latin America where the scenery is awesome. I love the view from Don Jose's farm and all that stuff. It was just amazing. And, I want to host American teenagers in that farm, have like a little guest house like what Don Jose had at his farm. And I want to teach the kids a thing or two about the environment and maybe like teach them how to do community service, give them a little bit of community service to do. I just want to pass on my knowledge and my experience and just try to educate the future generation at that farm. And I definitely think that'd be something really cool to do. And that would just be such an awesome lifestyle just to own like a small farm like that. You grow everything. You grow chocolate. You grow macadamia nuts, you grow higuera, you grow raspberries, you pretty much grow everything at that farm. And then you get even a trout farm. I thought that was so cool. And then the waterfalls. Oh my goodness. If I could have a waterfall, like a real waterfall. I'm not talking like one of those, you have some artificial stones and then you can just turn on and off the water with the switch of a button. No, I want a legit waterfall. If I were to own a property like that, or even if I were to own a house in the future, that waterfall definitely really did inspire me to have one of those at my property. So, yeah. And then the next thing that I might possibly want to do is maybe study abroad in the Dominican Republic. I just had an awesome time in the Dominican Republic. And, so I started to look for some opportunities on how I could study in the Dominican Republic. So maybe I could go to Spanish school down there like I did in Guatemala. I don't really know any schools down there, but I could ask around. I could go ahead and, I now have new connections in the Dominican Republic. I have the kids from ACES, so I can definitely just go ask them for recommendations on what would be a good Spanish school to attend, right? Yeah. And then the other thing would be to, spend a semester, study abroad for a semester at ACES. I'd like to do ACES. I really like that campus and all. It was really nice. And, but the only program, I looked into this, the University of Illinois actually doesn't offer any programs in the Dominican Republic except for ACES 298, so if I were to study abroad in the Dominican Republic, I'd have to do it independently. Well, I found out that the Council for International Educational Exchange, or CISI, actually runs a study abroad program at Pucamaima, which was the other Santiago school. So for $13,000, I think that's how much it cost in the semester. I would just go down, I would take classes at Pucamaima, and I definitely think that would be pretty interesting, Some classes that I'd want to take down there is I'd definitely be more interested in learning more about Dominican history. I think that's fascinating to get like some insider insight, if that makes sense, on, you know, all the political things that have happened in the history of the Dominican Republic, like Juan Pablo Duarte, Gregorio Lupieron, and the two U.S. occupations. I definitely think those things are really fascinating. And yeah, the Dominican Republic's got an interesting political history, and that's definitely something I want to explore more of. So yeah, and the other thing that I'd been inspired by was the health talk from Marcos's wife. You know, I kind of found that interesting, and I do take a small interest in medicine, so, you know, her talk really just kind of reinforced my small interest in medicine, a general interest in medicine, and I really got to learn, well, you know, I'm definitely going to consider medical school, because I think that, you know, working in a trauma center I definitely do like medicine. I would, you know, kind of think working in a trauma center would be interesting, because, you know, you got to help a lot of people out, and it's really interesting as well. And either that, or I might go and get a master's in public health, which is the degree. I actually asked her about this, so working on medical policy I think would also be interesting, like what's the policy that the U.S. has right now with vaccines and stuff like that. I definitely think that would be interesting, and then to learn more about. And then also it reinforced my interest, you know, learning about getting that introduction to health. Inspired me to take Econ 482, which is health economics in the future. So all of the examples here are the main things that really inspired a career change in me from the trip. And yeah, I just really thought it was interesting. Oh man, my RA's mad again. I gotta go deal with that. Let's talk now about how this trip impacted me and what really contributed to those feelings of the things that impacted me. Alright, so first of all, this trip was really an eye-opening experience. I learned a lot of new things from this trip. Now, there are definitely portions of the trip that contributed to this. The first one was Bate Libertad. Sorry, my pronunciation's pretty bad, but yeah. So at the Bate, I saw the kids. You know, they were just playing in the street. They were really happy. They were still having fun and all, despite the fact that they didn't really have much, and that really opened my eyes, because I got to see, like, you don't really need money to be happy. You should appreciate and make the most of what you have. And for me, that was such an eye-opening experience. And then the other eye-opening thing at the Bate that I saw was I was talking with a community leader, and he was telling me about how things at the Bate services at the Bate actually aren't that good. He says that it takes longer for if somebody needs an ambulance in the Bate, it actually takes longer for the ambulance to get to the Bate versus the other town, because the Bate actually doesn't have like any services, because it has to come from the bigger town about 10-15 minutes away. And, you know, that just taught me that, you know, not everybody really has the same social services in the Dominican Republic. And, you know, that also opened my eyes. Yeah. And then the other thing that opened my eyes were at another time, sorry. Another instance, another eye-opening experience for me was at Don Jose's farm. Um, he taught me that global warming is actually really screwing up farms. You know, he showed us the coffee and all, and he told us the story about his coffee exportation to Vermont and all. And you know, it actually opened my eyes to the issue about how global warming could potentially affect the food supply in the future with the increasing temperatures. You know, what's going to happen? I know that the coffee production in the world's already not as high as it used to be. What's going to happen in the future if global temperatures continue to rise? It really provided me some insight into that issue. And then the other thing is another instance where another time where I got an eye-opening experience was, you know, throughout the trip, you know, when we visited the Mirabal Sisters Museum and all, and got the history talk, we got to learn about the political struggles of the Dominican Republic, and that really opened my eyes to the political struggles firsthand that some countries have faced, you know, the Mirabal Sisters with the Trujillo dictatorship, Juan Pablo Duarte, how he overthrew the Haitian government in 1818. I think it was 1842. Yeah, how he overthrew it in 1842. He was one of the founding fathers of the Dominican Republic. How the U.S. occupation, the two U.S. occupations, and one in 1965 and the other in I think it was 1916 to 1924. So yeah, the Dominican Republic has an interesting political history, and I really got an eye-opening experience into what that was like and its effects on the country. So there's a bunch of different influences from all these things in the Dominican Republic, and I think that's really interesting and provided me a lot of insight. So yeah. And then I also got to see on this trip was how beautiful our world is. It just reinforced the fact, it reinforced to me how beautiful this world was, because, you know, we saw amazing scenery, whether it be when we were driving from Santo Domingo to Santiago. We got to see so much scenery. We got to drive through the mountains and such. When we went to Jarabacoa, that also was another instance where we saw a lot of scenery. And then Puerto Plata Beach. Oh my goodness, that was amazing. Yeah, so I really got to see all this beauty, and it really did get to open my eyes to, you know, how beautiful our planet is. That was pretty cool. Yeah, it was so stunning and all. And then besides eye-opening experiences, this trip also taught me how to be open-minded. It taught me how to on that trip, I stepped out of my comfort zone many times. One of the times was, you guys all probably heard me speaking lots of Spanish. Well, I made the effort to speak Spanish. I went out and spoke it. I knew that my Spanish wasn't the best, but I still went out and I spoke Spanish. And then the other thing was, I learned how to make the most of my experience. If there's an opportunity on the trip that I have the opportunity to do, if that makes sense, then I want to do it. I want to make the most of my trip and do everything that I can't do on an everyday basis. One of those instances was when we were at Bonalino, at the Bonalino plantation in Mau. I got to do the packing of the bananas. When am I going to get the opportunity on a daily basis here to pack bananas? I don't think I'm going to get that opportunity here. So, you know what? When I got the opportunity to do it, I just went out and I did it. That was amazing. That was a pretty fun experience. So now I can say that I packed bananas firsthand. And I just think that's really cool. And yeah, so that's pretty much what I thought of the Dominican Republic trip. It was just, one more time, it was just an amazing experience. And, you know, it's been about a month since we left. And, you know, to this day, I still think about those amazing memories. I still think about those amazing times that I had in the Dominican Republic. I probably have a lifetime full of stories from the Dominican Republic, honestly. It was so awesome. Man, I really want to go back. And I will go back. For sure.